Yes, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Sunday night, the 29th of March 2026. It's 12 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m., and I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where I'm grateful to you guys, or for you guys that have recently subscribed to the channel, all of you that have been watching our content. I implore you to keep doing the same. We put out some fresh content, and keep watching it. And forget not to give us your feedback down in the comment section as that content comes through. So today we did publish a video about Pierre Hincape joining Arsenal's growing list of injuries. But in the immediate aftermath of putting that out, we also learned that Hincape Zubimendi had withdrawn from the Spanish national team squad or camp due to injury. He had a strap on his knee and he felt discomfort in his right knee, so he has been sent back to London Colony for further assessment. So we'll be discussing all that through the course of tonight's broadcast, among other things. But more importantly, we'll begin from the obvious place where Tottenham Hotspurs have sacked Igor Tudor, or sacked Igor Tudor earlier on in the day. But of course, the communication is that the two parties have mutually agreed to go separate ways, given the kind of things that did transpire prior to the international break. You all remember that result, 3-0 result by with Tottenham losing against Nottingham Forest in the relegation battle. So there's plenty of that for us to digest through. Who are they pursuing? Who is refusing to budge? What is the context and things like that? So we're going to be talking about all that in just a bit. But as we speak, France are tuning up against Colombia, while in the earlier game, all these are international friendlies. Mexico and Portugal settled for a goalless draw. So that is all happening as we speak. Unfortunately, I've not been able to catch many of those games due to internet challenges. My Wi-Fi is out again, like I told you last night, and I've been trying to get in touch with my ISP to have this situation resolved. They keep claiming they're calling my number. It's not going through. When other people call the same number, it goes through, So yeah, but I sort of I just have to be patient and wait until tomorrow. So for those of you that are just joining us, my name is Robert Kesakos, and I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where it's 11:15 p.m. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Leave me a comment down in the comment section. I'll be reading all your comments as we go through tonight's episode of this edition of the live broadcast, as we oftentimes do. We come to you live every single day of the week in the nights, Monday to Sunday, with our broadcasts on Fridays coming a bit earlier, even though in the last 2 weeks we have done those broadcasts at 11 p.m. Sooner or later we will be reverting back to our routine schedule when it comes to that, so please bear that in mind. Anyways, putting that aside, let's begin with one place. And like I said, Tottenham Hotspurs is the only place for us to begin with, because earlier today they did communicate that they had agreed on mutual consent to part ways with manager Igor Tudor there, the former Tottenham Hotspurs manager, did part ways with the club. According to a club statement that was published on their social media, at least on their Twitter handle or X handle, Spurs official, it says, "We can confirm that it has been mutually agreed for head coach Igor Tudor to leave the club with immediate effect." Tomislav Rogic and Ricardo Ragnach have also left their respective roles of goalkeeping coach and physical coach. We thank Igor Tudor and those two others for their efforts during the past 6 weeks, in which they have worked tirelessly. We also acknowledge the bereavement that Igor Tudor has recently suffered. We also acknowledge the bereavement that Igor Tudor has recently suffered and send our support to him and his family at this difficult time. And an update on a new head coach will be provided in due course. Now, while we wait for an update on the head coach, in the last couple of hours, it has come out that Jamin Colin Defoe, the former Tottenham Hotspur striker, has been named as the working manager of Tottenham Hotspur at the moment. That means he's there, sort of warming the seat until they find that ideal candidate that can take on the ropes. Now, before we get to who is the ideal candidate, who are they targeting, who are they trying to speak to, Hijack K says hello to you too. Where are you joining us from? Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here. So, like I said, for me, this has been a long time coming. In fact, it should have been done as soon as yesterday. Unfortunately, for some reason, whatever the case may have been, Tottenham Hotspur decided to defer this until this particular juncture. Where are you from? I'm from Kampala, Uganda, small landlocked country in the eastern part of Africa, neighboring Kenya, Tanzania, South Sudan, Rwanda, as well as the DRC Congo. Those are our immediate neighbors. So thank you for asking. So I remember I said this in the immediate aftermath of Tottenham Hotspur losing against Atletico de Madrid by 5-2 at the Riyadh Air Stadium over there in Spain in the UEFA Champions League. And I think at the time it had been their fourth consecutive defeat because it came in the aftermath of defeats against Arsenal, against subsequently there was Fulham, there was Crystal Palace, and then that game against Atletico de Madrid. And I remember saying, whoever is responsible of writing the sacking letter should have had it ready by the end of the 90 minutes at the Riyadh Air Stadium. But then they decided to stick with him for a little bit more time. And guess what? He went and shared the spoils with Liverpool in a 1-1 draw, which felt like a bit of an encouragement. Then, in the subsequent fixture, which was the return leg of the UEFA Champions League against Atletico de Madrid, he decided to beat up against Atletico de Madrid by 3-2 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Somebody's asking, Mwanziat says, speak about Alan Okello's performance. His performance? When? Today he did not. He was busy watching his team from the Lango sub-region up against the Acholi sub-region in the FUFA Drum competition, which is a domestic competition. But if you want to speak about Alan Okello's performances in the Tanzanian Premier League, yeah, we will speak about that in a bit. But for now, indulge me as I conclude issues on Tottenham Hotspur. So, for me, when they beat up against Atletico de Madrid by 3-2, everybody thought, oh, maybe this is the turning point, because that in itself came in the aftermath of a spirited fight in a 1-1 draw against Liverpool away to Anfield, a game that many of us thought they would go on to lose. So, very encouraging, I must say. So they go into the subsequent fixture. You're thinking, well, they've done pretty well in that one. Let's see what they do against Nottingham Forest. They were shambolic. They lost by 3-0. I think Morgan Gibbs-White, Igor Jesus, and Timothy Awoni being the goal scorers in that one, which was the last game prior to the international break. And I remember saying this, as soon as they lost that game, the writing was on the wall. However, what deferred his sacking, or the Tottenham and Igor Tudor's entourage parting ways, was the fact that he learned in the immediate aftermath of that game that he had lost his father, Mario Tudor. So, unfortunately, even if you are Tottenham Hotspur and wanted to be as ruthless as bosses can, surely you cannot sack somebody. You cannot sack somebody on the day that they lose their father. Really not. So, anyways, it was only a deferred inevitability. In other words, it's like postponing or procrastinating the inevitable. It's like saying, when you feel sleepy and you want to sleep, but then you sort of refuse to go to bed or to sleep. You're only deferring the inevitable, because sooner or later when that sleep overpowers you or catches up with you, it will be too strong to stop. So basically, that's what happened. And today, it was revealed that they had part ways with Tottenham Hotspurs. And now, Jermaine Colin Defoe will take on the reins. I've never seen him in a coaching capacity or a managerial capacity. So this is going to be the first time. Will he last until their next game, which is going to come in the Premier League? Because unlike some other teams in the Premier League, Tottenham Hotspurs have already exited the FA Cup. So therefore, and when we come back from the when we come back from the international break, the immediate task at hand for for some of these Premier League clubs is going to be their games in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup for the first weekend. That means all teams that are not involved in that competition will have to wait until the subsequent weekend for them to get a game of football. In other words, in an almost never seen before kind of incident, because Tottenham Hotspurs are going to be playing away to Sunderland, yes, at the Stadium of Light in their next game, which will come on the 12th of April. For the first time in as long as I can remember, or in as far as the history of my memory serves me, we are going to see that in the immediate aftermath of an international break, in the Premier League, clubs have literally a week and a half to prepare for their next game. But that's only exclusive to clubs that are not in the FA Cup, but are also not playing in Europe. Because for those clubs that have responsibilities in Europe, they'll come next, at the other week, subsequently, midway. I'll give an example. Teams like Liverpool, Manchester City, teams like Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea, West Ham, Leeds, and who else? All those teams have responsibilities. Yes, those 6 teams have responsibilities in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, with Chelsea taking on Port Vale, Arsenal away to Southampton, Manchester City at home against Liverpool, with Leeds away to West Ham. So, in the aftermath of that, teams like Liverpool and Arsenal, who are still in European competitions, will have midweek games in the UEFA Champions League, with Arsenal playing on Tuesday away to Sporting Lisbon in Portugal. And then, I think on Wednesday, Liverpool will have their game against PSG in the UEFA Champions League. That's also the quarterfinals. And then they will return from that and play their match day 32 games of the league, with Liverpool set to be at home on Saturday, I think I stand to be corrected. I think Liverpool will play on a Tuesday. I need to cross-check with that when it comes to the UEFA Champions League. But Liverpool, in the immediate aftermath of that, they'll play at home against Fulham, while Arsenal will come on Saturday in the early kickoff against AFC Bournemouth. It will be a home fixture for the Gunners. So you can see that for teams like Manchester United, teams like Manchester United, Tottenham Hotspurs, FC Bournemouth, West Ham United, Fulham, teams like Wolverhampton Wanderers, Everton, Burnley, Brighton, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, Sunderland, all those teams that do not have responsibilities in the FA Cup or the European competitions will have to wait until the weekend of 11th and 12th to play their games. Manchester United will have to even wait a day further because they play on Monday Night Football. So that's what is going to happen. So therefore, whoever is going to be appointed as a Tottenham Hotspur manager will have a couple of days maybe, or even a week, to get his team ready for that fixture away at the Stadium of Light. Now, I must note, Liverpool will play on a Wednesday. Now, I do not know why they would make Liverpool play on a Wednesday, and then the Premier League insists on having their fixture being played on a Saturday late kickoff. But anyway, it's the Premier League. So, With that said, we do not know whether it will still be Jamin Colin Defoe in charge or it will be somebody else at the time in the rooms or at the hierarchy of Tottenham Hotspurs. We'll just have to wait and see what that will be. But speaking of them, their primary target, as I have told you prior or before on this channel or on this forum, is that former Brighton manager in Roberto Di Zerbi, former Brighton manager in Roberto Di Zerbi, who not too far back ago part ways with Sporting CP, with Olympique Marseille in the French League One, is their preferred candidate for a replacement for Igor Tudor. Now, here's the challenge. Tottenham Hotspur insist or are trying to persuade Igor Tudor, Tottenham Hotspur are trying to persuade Roberto Di Zerbi to join them now with an enticing sign-on fee, a bonus should Tottenham Hotspur survive relegation, and then, of course, help with the squad assessment ahead of the summer and subsequently into next season. However, the Italian gaffer insists that now is not an ideal time. He would rather wait until the end of the season for him to take on the reins. Like I told you guys, it's a bit of a catch-22. If he comes in now and helps Tottenham survive relegation, they're going to sing praises of him, heroic in a way. But if he joins them now and they end up getting relegated, that will be on his CV as well. Shambolic, villain in a way. So he's sort of caught between a rock and a hard stone. Now, I do not think he's in any rush whatsoever to make that kind of decision. In fact, his stance is good that he waits until the summer. I would support it. Now, the challenge for Tottenham Hotspur as well, according to the BBC Sport, this is according to Sami Mokbel of BBC Sport, he does say or report that whereas Tottenham Hotspur are inclined to appoint Sean Dyche as their head coach on an interim basis, reports do suggest that he wants at least an 18-month contract. How many months do we have left until the end of the season? Roughly 2 months. That's the month of April and May, because literally the last game of the season essentially is that Champions League final, which comes May the 30th. In as far as the Premier League are concerned, it is going to be a little earlier than that. In other words, Match Day 38 will come around the 24th of Sunday, May. That's when you should expect Match Day 38. So Tottenham Hotspur are insisting, no, come on, let's get you in, help us survive relegation. You're in for the next 7 games, and we pay you your worth. And then in the summer, we move on to our preferred candidate for a managerial permanent appointment. That's the ideal world, or that's the preference of Tottenham Hotspur. But like I told you, their priority is to try and convince or persuade Roberto Di Zerbi that now is a good time to join, even though he is still insisting that now, I do not want to risk it, in my humble opinion. So we're going to have to wait and see how all this plays out in the coming couple of days. And I do suspect it may not go throughout the entire week. Maybe by the end of the week, whichever the manager or person will be may not necessarily be in charge at Tottenham Hotspur, but the decision may have been made on who that person will be. So I think we just have to be patient or wait and see who that person will be. Now, I understand Sean Dyche's insistence here, maybe, or his inclination to ask for a bigger contract. But I do not think the objectives of Tottenham Hotspurs are going to change. I do not think the objectives of Tottenham Hotspurs are going to change in regards to the interim situation, should it be that De Zerbi won't budge. So here's what Sammy Mockwell had to say. Tottenham ascertaining whether Roberto De Zerbi is willing to take a permanent head coach role immediately. Sean Dyche would want a minimum of 18 months contract to replace departed Igor Tudor. So there's a bit of a catch-22 there. And to further emphasize that, Ben Jacobs of Gimme Sport and Talk Sport says Spurs are making efforts to persuade Roberto De Zerbi to change his mind and take on a role before the summer. That's despite sources revealing that the former Brighton and Marseille boss would prefer to wait until the summer to see whether Spurs stay up, as well as assess the managerial market at the end of the season. Now, that's also very key for Roberto De Zerbi to assess the managerial market, because there's going to be a host of teams that are going to be without managers going into next season. One of those teams that we already know is Crystal Palace. I do not mean to say that the Crystal Palace job would be more appealing to a manager than that of Tottenham Hotspurs, but it makes it is a statement of fact that Oliver Glasson is going to be leaving Crystal Palace at the end of the season. With Andoni Iraola yet to sign a new contract at AFC Bournemouth, that role could be vacant. Manchester United, whereas there's information that they could give the job to Michael Carrick, that they are assessing other candidates, Roberto De Zerbi is one of those candidates. The Manchester United job would be more appealing to Roberto De Zerbi, I think, than any other vacant managerial role currently available in the English Premier League. Then, Fulham, Marco Silva. His contract runs out at the end of the season. He's yet to renew. That role could be empty, could be vacant. Again, this is not to suggest that any of those clubs in Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, and Fulham would be more appealing to Roberto De Zerbi than Tottenham would be. But if you're Roberto De Zerbi and Tottenham are relegated, you don't want to go and manage them in the Championship. You would rather go to a Fulham. You'd rather go to a Crystal Palace. You'd rather go to a Bournemouth if that is what is available. But like I said, Manchester United are still in the search. Who knows? Over in Germany, the speculation that Kasper Hillman could be out of work at the end of the season, that they could, Bayer Leverkusen could choose to part ways with him. Now, although Bayer Leverkusen have been signaled to say that Fabian Hatzler of Brighton will be their number one candidate, who is it to say that Igor Tudor cannot find himself on that shortlist? Or maybe, if Fabian Hatzler leaves Brighton, Roberto De Zerbi backslides and he goes back to Brighton and Hove Albion. Who knows? So he's right to say he's going to sit and wait and assess his options. I'm not too sure whether Christian Chivu's job is really, really secure at Inter Milan. Whereas he is at the summit of the Italian Serie A table with, I think, is it 6 points ahead or 8? Whatever the case is, you never know. The Inter Milan job could become available. Who knows if tomorrow Antonio Conte decides to part ways with Napoli. He seems never to stay too long at clubs. So, indeed, if you're Roberto De Zerbi, you have to wait and assess the managerial market at the end of the season. Who knows? Maybe Liverpool decide to part ways with Arne Slot and that job becomes available. Would Liverpool be interested in a manager of Roberto De Zerbi's caliber? Why not? So, anyways, Ben Jacobs adds that Tottenham are willing to offer Roberto De Zerbi some significant survival bonus, but it's no secret that he is their leading candidate. So there's that. So we'll have to wait and see who Tottenham appoints. But in Igor Tudor being sacked at Tottenham Hotspur, he does join a list of other 4 managers that did not last at least 50 days in their respective roles, whether they were serving as interims or permanent roles. And among them is Christian Stellini. You remember he replaced Antonio Conte at Tottenham when Antonio Conte was sacked. Then you remember Sam Allardyce, his 30-day stint at Leeds United. Ange Postecoglou, more recently at Nottingham Forest, survived only 39 days. You know? So, and it's been 43 days for Igor Tudor. So really, that's the situation with that. So that's the story about Tottenham Hotspur and around Tottenham Hotspur. We'll have to wait and see whether they can find the perfect manager or potent replacement to help them survive relegation. Tim Sherwood has been saying, like a canary, that he would take the Tottenham Hotspur job and he would help Tottenham Hotspur stay up. Will he be given the job? Again, we shall have to wait and see. You know? So, let's move on to Arsenal, because if you're an Arsenal fan, you must be praying more than twice a day at this rate. Earlier on, we did publish a video letting you know that Pierre Hincape had joined Arsenal's growing list of injuries, in addition to Noni Madueke, who appeared to have suffered an injury in England's 1-1 draw against Uruguay in that international friendly. As though that wasn't enough, Bukayo Saka and Declan Rice were sent home for medical assessments. Now, as soon as we were done uploading that episode about Arsenal as Pierre Hincape, we did learn that Martin Zubimendi had left the Spanish national team camp due to discomfort in his right knee. I mean, at this rate, you must fear for this Arsenal side. Now, it's not a given that all of them are definite injuries. But the moment you hear words precaution, medical tests, it means there's reason for concern. That's what it simply means. If you need a more recent reminder, when Eberechi Eze was being interviewed in the aftermath of their 2-0 victory against Bayer Leverkusen, he said it was just some cramping that he felt, uneasiness, but he feels okay, or he felt okay. Guess what happened? He missed their 2 subsequent games. You know? Sorry, not subsequent, 2 subsequent games. He missed a game against Manchester City in the finals of the Carabao Cup, and eventually could not make it to the England national team because of a calf injury that has been said could see him out for as long as a month. Now, they have been, according to John Cross of the Mirror, he did say that he did report earlier on today that there are hopes that Eberechi Eze will return to fitness to travel to the Etihad Stadium in Arsenal's game away to Manchester City. That is going to come in about a fortnight after the first weekend of the Premier League. Sorry, after the first weekend after the international break, because it's slated for the 19th of April. That's when that game is slated to be played. So, if we are being honest, it's not looking pretty for Arsenal. And I've seen, all the insinuations that, at this point, Arsenal is just, trying to pull as many as their players out of international duty. But here's context. Because all these have been communicated by respective federations, and they've given the reasons. So, according to the Spanish statement, they said Martin Zubimendi has withdrawn from the Spanish national team camp due to discomfort in his right knee. To avoid any risk and to protect the player's health, he has been removed from the squad. Arsenal FC's medical staff have been informed of the situation. Now, for those of you that saw footage of Martin Zubimendi in some of the training footage with the Spanish national team, you may have seen a strap on, a protective gear on his knee, on his right knee. So that tells you there's something. Now, this takes me back to what I told you a little earlier when we were discussing the injuries of Gabriel Magalhaes and William Saliba. It's not uncommon for players to play games through injury or discomfort. We know did it last season. We know Ben White's done it before, and they're not the first or last players to do that. A lot of times, depending on the necessity, players have had to play through painkillers. They'll get a painkiller injection and go and play a game, and they'll have a good game. But that doesn't mean they do not have any discomfort or are playing with an injury. So that's what you ought to bear in mind. That because I've seen a lot of people trying to use the justification, oh, how come Saliba played at the weekend? Gabriel Magalhaes played against Manchester City. How Hincape Zubimendi played? That's okay, And by the way, injuries, pretty much like illness, you do not decide when you get them. They just come when they do. Some players get, for example, Manchester City's John Stones is among the 8 players that England sent back to their respective clubs, having sustained a knock during training on Friday. So, when we said that Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka joined Noni Madueke in the cohort of Arsenal players that were leaving the England camp to return to Arsenal, those weren't the only players. John Stones of Manchester City was following them out the door. Adam Wharton of Crystal Palace was following them out the door. Aaron Ramsdale of Newcastle was following them out of the door. Fikayo Tomori of AC Milan was following them out of the door. So, and who else? There's another player that was following them out of the door. So, really, it's as unfortunate as it sounds, it is the reality. The other player was Dominic Calvert-Lewin of Leeds United. So, for me, I do not want to draw into this conspiracy theory. Can it be true? Yes. Back in the day, Sir Alex Ferguson used to do it all the time. Have his players not go for international break, especially this March international break, because you're at the business end of the season. You're chasing a Premier League title. You do not, because, like I told you, majority of these players that have gone away for international duty are playing friendly matches. It's only a handful of them, or a few of them, that are into the final stages of the World Cup qualifiers, like we saw Italy. So if you're Sandro Tonali from Newcastle, you're Riccardo Carafiori from Arsenal, if you're Gianluigi Donnarumma from Manchester City, Bastoni from Inter Milan, you're Manuel Locatelli from Juventus, you're going to play. If you're Daniel James from Leeds, you're going to play for Wales. Why? Because it's a serious game. World Cup slot is on the line. So, in a nutshell, this is not very, very encouraging news for the Arsenal. Because while some of these sort of pullouts have been precautionary, I've told you what happened with Eberechi Eze. He thought it was a precaution that he got withdrawn. And, he wanted that as well. But look what happened. Because sometimes, in the heat of the moment, when you still have that heat of the game, you may not feel the gravity of the injury as much until when your body is entirely relaxed. You know, when you've sat down and had that aftermath game sweat on you dry out, and then you go take a cold bath, and then sit somewhere or lay down somewhere and relax your entire body, your muscles. The time it could take may vary. It could be an hour, it could be 2, I don't know. But when you decide to get up from that spot, that is when you realize that what you thought was minor pain is actually more gravier than you actually first felt. That's just the nature of injuries sometimes. sometimes you do not even feel them instantly. It's in the aftermath of the game. I remember when Declan Rice had his injury, I think, he said all of a sudden he had watched his knee swell. Not that he sat there watching it swell, but he literally woke up to a swollen knee. And therefore he did not train, he missed a game. So the point there being that anything can happen. You may have not felt it during the game, may have felt it after the game. That's why the likes of William Saliba, Leandro Trossard, Gabriel Magalhaes withdrew. Now, all that, unfortunately, like I keep saying, so that list is continuously growing for yes, it's continuous. To the international break itself, you had a cohort of Arsenal players out through injury. And that cohort of Arsenal players included Martin Odegaard, Mikel Merino, Ebeleche Eze, those ones, and Julian Timber. 4 of those already confirmed, had already missed games prior. You know, I think Timber missed 2 games. Eze missed the final. I don't know how many Martin Odegaard has missed that thus far. Mikel Merino has been out for quite some time. You know, now, then you add on Leandro Trossard, which is 5. 6 is William Saliba. 7 is Gabriel Magalhaes. And then Noni Madueke has joined the party, Piero Hincape, and Martin Zubimendi. That's as many as 11 players of Arsenal that are out either on precautionary measures or add Bukayo Saka and Declan Rice to the list. If I hadn't already added them. So it's not looking pretty. That's why I said if you're an Arsenal fan out there, you must be praying in whichever language you know best. Because if you wake up to the reality that these are all injuries, even if you're going to miss them for a week, trust me, it's going to be a long week. Bearing in mind that you have a game against Southampton and a game away to Sporting CP before AFC Bournemouth. Even if it were Man City and they were receiving this injury update after injury update, it feels like every day we're going to be waking up to another injury update or a fresh injury of an Arsenal player that has been away on international duty or even among those that remained at the club. So Ben White is away with the England national team currently. Gabriel Martinelli is away with the Brazil national team. You know? So Christian Mosquera is away with the Spanish national team, as is David Raya. Christian Nogard away with the Danish international team. Who else? You know, Victor Gyökeres is away with the Swedish national team. So it's not easy. It's not pretty at all. I do not think there is a single club that would want to find themselves anywhere remotely near the kind of situation that Arsenal are having to deal with on their hands at the moment. So it's very concerning, but they have to live through it. There are hopes that some of these players, given that some of these injuries could be precautionary, that maybe at the end of the 2 weeks may have recovered. There is hope that Martin Odegaard will be back. For Julian Timber, we are yet to hear much. Leandro Trossard could be among those that could be back. As for the pair of the center backs, we do not know. Now, also, there are people who seem to think or suggest that maybe Pierre Hincape is a fake of an injury, but he did suffer a muscular injury or appear to have discomfort emanating from a muscular injury during the game, a friendly against Morocco. So there's that, you know. So This is according to James Bench. He said that Hincape seemed to be in discomfort in the 70th minute of Ecuador's 1-1 draw against 1-1 draw with Morocco. After a recovery run, he appeared to signal to the bench that he needed to come off and then sat on the turf. Now, for those of you that have seen the clip making the rounds, as he came off, he appeared to trot. Now, just because a player trots off the pitch doesn't mean that it's all good. But we'll have to wait and hear from the assessment of the Arsenal medical team and see what they will have arrived to, what the situation will be. But trust me, for somebody that is always keeping in check with the traffic of some Arsenal farms, there's a bit of a fever within those ranks. So, according to Roy Keane, by the way, he says, I do not understand the outrage about Arsenal and Mikel Arteta pulling players out of international duties. Be it because of injury or caution, it's nothing new. He said, we also Alex Ferguson do it year in, year out with Manchester United. He wouldn't play key players like Rooney, Rio, and others for more than 45 minutes and then pull them out of faking and then pull them out by faking injury. So they did not go to international duties, or would pull them out when they were within their national teams. The evidence is littered on the internet. So he concludes by saying Mikel Arteta must do what he needs to do for caution purposes. They are competing for the treble. They need all hands. Exactly. He couldn't have said it any better by providing historical context with Sir Alex Ferguson, but also by stating the obvious, given Arsenal's responsibilities for the remainder of this season. So I think those of you that want to come up with conspiracy theories, it's as simple as that. You do not need to conspire. So yeah, there's all that to think about. So anyways, for me, in part, it's been a bit of a frustrating weekend because of internet challenges. Trust me, there's a lot I had planned to do in this weekend of the international break in terms of the content that I was supposed to deliver to you guys. But I've had limitations of that because I've been only aided to even do these broadcasts, which is a good thing. But also, I try not to abuse the kindness that was extended to me. So, for example, I think we must be having a video. I think we have about 2 videos waiting to be uploaded and published. In fact, one of them should be coming out tomorrow and the other on Tuesday. Yeah, that's the anticipation. So I think one should come out tomorrow morning, if all goes well. Tomorrow morning at what's the most ideal time? We'll see. But tomorrow, at least tomorrow. I don't know what time exactly, but at least I anticipate tomorrow. Then, so guys, go over to the video section and watch all that recent content when we talk about my Premier League best 11 for the season 2025-2026. We talk about the 6 players that I think have the potential to replace Mohamed Salah at Liverpool. And then today we've talked about Arsenal's injuries. We should be having something coming up. Let me not even let the cats out of the bag. you will see them when they do come out. Just turn your notifications on and you'll be notified as soon as those videos come out. So simply keep it locked on the Football Tribe UG channel. Now, this is for purposes of clarification. In terms of the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League, here is how games are scheduled to be played. On Tuesday, this will be the 7th of April. Real Madrid will be up against Bayern Munich, while Arsenal will be playing away to Sporting CP. All games will kick off at 10 p.m. East African time. Now, then on Tuesday, kickoff will be around the same time with Barcelona taking on Atletico de Madrid, while PSG, I don't know why are Barcelona starting from home? Yet they finished within the top 8. Did they? Yeah, but the only Spanish team to finish within the top 8, but they're starting from home. Anyway, I don't know what the semantics are there. And then PSG will be at home against Liverpool. That will be on Wednesday. And then the subsequent week will have the reverse fixtures with the swap of days. Those that play on Tuesday this week, the subsequent week, they'll play on Wednesdays. So that's a simple start. In terms of the Champions League top scorers, Kylian Mbappe is still leading the pile with 13 goals. Harry Kane and Newcastle's Anthony Gordon all have 10 goals. Remember, Newcastle are already out, so Harry Kane has an opportunity to extend his tally, while Kylian Mbappe equally has his opportunity to extend his tally. So that's that in as far as those things go. So, okay, Mwanzatias to ask me to talk about Alan Okello. Now, I've not watched enough of Alan Okello while at Young Africans. However, I've seen a couple of clips here and there on social media, and he's looked sharp, he's looked brilliant, he's looked good on dead ball situations, those sort of through passes and stuff like that. He's looked good. So I can't give you a rating of, I'll give him a 7 out of 10 ever since he joined Young Africans, but he seems to be loving life at Young Africans. So we'll have to wait and see. We are an absolute joke of a nation. Jesus Christ. Anyways, politics aside. Okay, this one is called Yaz LFC. He's practically commenting about what I was talking about earlier. Or he's one of those to sort of float the conspiracy theory. He says 11 withdrawals doesn't just happen by coincidence. When you've got players like Saliba, Gabriel, Declan Rice, Saka, Martin Odegaard, Zubi, etc., all suddenly unavailable at the same time, it raises eyebrows, especially when most of them are then magically fine for club football. Again, Roy Keane just explained that. Clubs always talk about player welfare, but let's not pretend there isn't an element of control here. Arsenal know exactly what they are doing. Keep key players fresh, avoid unnecessary international risk, maximize performance in the title running. Now, when you say keep players fresh, Noni Madueke played for England. He got an injury. How is that keeping him fresh? Martin Odegaard cannot be used in this case. He was already injured. Declan Rice, even his own national team manager, thought he needed to take a breather, as well as Bukayo Saka. That's why in the 35-man squad he summoned, they sat out the game against Uruguay. So if Arsenal do an extension of the same, I see no problem with that. Then avoid unnecessary risk. Indeed. Why is it a necessary risk? Many of these players are guaranteed call-ups to their respective national teams. if you're Pierre Hincape, you're definitely going to the Ecuador national team. That is without a doubt, for as long as you're fine and fit. If you're Martin Zubimendi, you're going to be part of that Spanish national team. If you're Martin Odegaard, you'll be at the World Cup with the Norwegian team. That's guaranteed. If you're Bukayo Saka and Declan Rice, you're part of the England national team. If you're Gabriel Magalhaes, you're part of the Brazilian team. And if you're William Saliba, France is not leaving you behind. So, going out to play friendlies for a team that you're already guaranteed of playing in, why take the risk? That's why Thomas Tuchel has taken the approach of testing players that he thinks could be additional members to what he believes is core squad. Now, make no mistake, do not be lied to whatsoever. There is not a single national team manager worth their salt that doesn't know what their core squad is unless he got appointed yesterday. In other words, out of the squad of 25, 26 players, or maybe 23, I don't remember what the exact number is, at least 11 players, you already know those. And even in those 11 players, you know that 7 of those, or the bare minimum 6 to 8, are guaranteed starters in your team for as long as they are fully fit and available. That's just how it works. So, why risk them to suffer an injury when they're playing Japan, if you Declan Rice, when you have a Premier League title to chase down? Meanwhile, other clubs send players off, risk injuries, and deal with the consequences. Now, when he talks about other clubs sending players off and risking injuries and deal with the consequences, is as though he's trying to say Arsenal have not sent players and have not risked injuries. Again, need I have to remind you that Christian Mosquera is still with the Spanish national team, Riccardo Carafiori with the Italian national team, among others. Then, I've given you a bit of historical context. Last season, Martin Odegaard, you remember that ankle injury that kept him out of action for 2 months? He suffered it during an international break. You remember, I think last season, on 2 different occasions, Riccardo Carafiori returned from the national team with injuries. Do you know why Takahiro Tomiyasu ended up leaving Arsenal? Because of an injury that wasn't healing. But where did he sustain the injury from? During the international break. So, it's not to say that Arsenal have put themselves in a bubble where they are insulated of any risk whatsoever. That's not the case. I'll give you another school of thought. If Brazil were going to play Argentina in a final game that decides whether they go through to the World Cup or not, do you think Gabriel Magalhaes, if he was sort of fit or even if half fit, would have stayed? He would have gone because the occasion is that important. Look at international friendlies the way clubs look at the early stages of the Carabao Cup. It's an opportunity to give players that do not play regularly playing time. Even with the national teams, there are those players that are always playing. The players that get someone to their respective national teams and don't even kick a ball for them. Forget not that Victor Gyökeres is away with the Swedish national team. Why? Qualification for the World Cup is at play, is at hand. He scored a hat-trick against Ukraine. So, when you talk about other clubs risking it and waiting to suffer the consequences, it's not like Arsenal do not have players left. Do you think if they had the option, they cannot pull out Victor Gyökeres? He's equally as important. Kai Havertz is away with the German national team. I've told you about Christian Mosquera. Christian Nørgaard is away. He's the kind of player that you'd want to see in action against Southampton in the FA Cup. David Raya is Arsenal's #1 goalkeeper. And they're risking him at the Spanish national team. He could get injured even in training. You remember when Mikel Merino had just joined Arsenal, he suffered a shoulder injury during training for his clash with Gabriel Magalhaes. So that can happen. They are still risking it. We know how important David Raya is for the Arsenal. So let not people like Yaz LFC hoodwink you into thinking that Arsenal are doing what is unprecedented in football. Let them not hoodwink you into thinking they are not risking or having players at risk. So it's not just them. Roy Keane has told you, Ferguson used to do it all the time. And what for him would do, prior to an international break, he would say, okay, what game are we playing over the weekend? Fulham. Bam, I need 2-3 goals in the first half. Then halftime, or 50th minute, I'm withdrawing Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo, or Roy Keane, or Paul Scholes. Why? I say they're injured, so that they do not go away with the England national team. Or if they do go away, I'm going to recall them. I'm going to tell them to fake injuries. It's the oldest trick in the book. So there's nothing new in this particular case. So he goes on to add that it's not technically breaking the rules. That's the frustrating part. They are operating right on the edge of what's allowed, using medical reports and precaution as a shield. You can't really pin anything on them officially, but it definitely leaves a bad taste when it's this many players at once. Again, you see, the exaggeration of this is quite telling. Let's be honest, how many players have really pulled out in terms of they were fully fit and they pulled out? Let's not have Martin Odegaard in this conversation. Let's not have Julian Timber in this conversation. Let's not have Ebelechi Eze in this conversation. Let's not have Mikel Merino in this conversation. Park all those aside. With Martin Zubimendi, the Spanish have told you, they're the ones that have sent him home. Okay, before even Zubimendi, Noni Madueke, his injury was there for the world to see. Pierre Hincape, his injury was there for the world to see. He played. These two were playing. They were involved in an actual game before their withdrawal. If you want to make the case of Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, I'll listen to you. Zubimendi, maybe. Saliba, Magalhaes, Leandro Trossard, I'll listen. But the impression that people are trying to drive or create, or the narrative they are trying to drive, like all the 13 players that are now believed to be injured or precautionally out, is because Arsenal have pulled the strings in this case. That's not true. Let's not be misleading to the world. Let's be honest. Let's be fair enough. So yeah, that is what is happening with Arsenal in regards to their injured players, in regards to national team duty, and more. Now, the beauty of the internet is that the internet doesn't forget. In November 2023, Manchester City withdrew 4 players from international duty. Do you remember who won the Premier League title in 2024? Because that's 2023-2024 Premier League season. Then, in November 2024, 3 more Manchester City players withdrew from international duty. You see, like I said, it's not like Arsenal trying to reinvent the wheel. It's not like what they're doing is new. In any case, there's nothing new under the sun. So expect all forms of speculations and anticipations when it comes to those. But teams have already suffered the wrath of these international friendly injuries. Barcelona lost Rafinha. He was playing in a friendly against France. I'm not faulting him for playing or for Brazil for playing him. It's just unfortunate that these things happen. Injuries are real. Injuries are real. And by the way, look through some of Arsenal's opponents. I've told you the responsibilities for Arsenal are bigger than some of those of their opponents. So we're going to have to wait and see. Anyways, guys, why don't you allow me call it a night? It's been a fruitful discussion about Tottenham Hotspur, about Arsenal's injuries. Let's do this again tomorrow morning. But I wish to say thank you so much, JKF, as well as Mwanziati, and all of those of you that have managed to catch tonight's broadcast. Let's look to do this again tomorrow morning. Hopefully, by then, our internet will have been restored. That's if it will be restored. If it's not restored, then we may likely miss tomorrow morning's episode. Allow me to wish you a wonderful rest of your night, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now. Stay blessed.